The tray flew out of my hands before I even understood what was happening. Hot stew splashed down the front of my uniform, and the whole mess hall went loud with laughter at once, like a wall falling down. My name is Caleb Hart, and I was the only human cadet in my class at Haven Station Fleet Academy. 211 cadets from a dozen worlds, and I was the smallest one in the room by a wide margin. The one who knocked my tray away was named Varric Das. He was Gravathi, a species built like walking stone, with gray skin thick enough to shrug off most small impacts and shoulders wider than a doorway. He did not even look at me when he did it. He just swung his arm out sideways as he walked past, the way you would wave off a fly, and 40 credits of Academy food ended up on my boots. "Eat off the floor, human," he said. "It suits you." 4 other cadets stood behind him, laughing the same heavy laugh. Kethan, Brow, Os, and a quiet one named Thurn who never said much but always laughed on cue like it was his job. I looked down at the mess on my boots, and then back up at Varric, and something in me refused to just take it quietly again. I had been taking it quietly for 3 months. 5 of you against 1 of me, I said. That is not strength, that is just math. The room went quiet for half a second, then someone near the back laughed at that instead, and Varric's face changed. Gravathi do not like being laughed at. It touches something old in their culture, something about honor and standing. "Say that again tonight," he said. "Behind the gymnasium, no teachers, just us." I should have walked away right then. I should have gone straight to a teacher and reported what happened. But 3 months of being the smallest target in the room had worn something down in me, and I had already decided, standing there with stew soaking into my socks, that I was done being an easy joke. I said I would be there. Word moves fast at a school full of bored young cadets. By the time evening came, almost 50 students had gathered around the open yard behind the gymnasium to watch. It was a small space, maybe 15 steps across, boxed in by 2 walls, a stack of storage containers, and a loading ramp used by the food delivery drones. Varric and his 4 friends walked out grinning, already certain how this would end. I want to tell you something about where I grew up, because it matters here. I was raised on a farm in a small town, the youngest of 4 cousins who thought wrestling matches in the yard were a normal way to settle every disagreement. My mother got tired of me coming home with bruises and no results, so she signed me up for a real wrestling program run out of the local town hall. I hated it for the first year. Then I stopped hating it, because I stopped losing, and losing had been the only part I truly minded. What that training gave me was not size. It gave me an understanding of space, and balance, and timing. It taught me that a bigger opponent's weight can become their biggest weakness if you know how to use it against them instead of standing there and matching it head-on. Varric had never learned that lesson, because Gravathi culture does not require it. Their disagreements are settled one at a time, out in the open, everyone giving the fighters room. Nobody ever taught him to think about where his own friends were standing. None of the 5 of them had ever needed to think about that before. I had. Kethan moved first, because he was the fastest of the group and the least patient. Instead of standing still and letting him reach me, I stepped sideways, right into the narrow gap between him and Brow. His charge missed me completely and carried him straight into his friend's shoulder instead. They both stumbled off balance for just a moment, and I used that moment to guide Kethan the rest of the way down to the ground, gently, using his own forward motion rather than fighting against it. That is the whole idea behind facing more than one opponent at once. 5 people surrounding a single target sounds frightening, until you realize that 4 of them cannot move freely without bumping into each other. My job was simple. Keep moving. Keep turning the fight into one person at a time, over and over, instead of 5 people all at once. Brow swung wide next, trying to close the distance too quickly, and clipped Os across the shoulder by accident. Os turned toward him for a second, annoyed, and that second was all I needed. I dropped low, caught Bral off balance, and guided him down using the same throw my old coach had drilled into me hundreds of times back home, until my body remembered it better than my mind did. Thurn, the quiet one, never even raised his hands. I watched his face change the moment he understood that tonight was not going to be the easy joke he expected. He backed away on his own, and I let him go without any trouble. That left Varric. He was sharper than the rest of his group and angrier now, which made him more dangerous but also more predictable. He came straight at me, the way his culture had trained him to, expecting a fair, standing exchange, the same kind of match his people had used for generations. I did not give him that. I moved low and stepped inside his reach before he could set his balance, put my shoulder into his center, and used his own forward weight to send him backward into the stack of storage containers behind him. It was loud, it was not graceful. He did not get up right away. The whole yard went silent in a way I had never heard from a crowd of Gravathi students before. 50 cadets, and not one sound. I stood there catching my breath. Stew still dried onto my uniform from hours earlier, and said the only thing that felt honest in that moment. Still just math. Varric sat up slowly, rubbing his jaw, and for a second I thought this was about to start again. Instead, he began to laugh, quieter this time, aimed at himself rather than at me. You never let it be 4 against 1, he said, and you never let it be 1 against 1 either. What was that? Wrestling, I told him. Where I come from, children learn it early, long before anyone thinks it could actually matter. Half of it is just knowing where everyone's feet are standing. By the next morning, of course, the whole academy already knew. 50 witnesses do not stay quiet for long. Commandant Rail called both of us into her office, and Varric had already given his own version of events before I even sat down, one that made me sound far more impressive than I felt walking in there. We both received extra physical training as a consequence, which suited me perfectly well, since it meant more practice and fewer enemies at the same time. Varric, it turned out, genuinely wanted to understand what I had done differently that night. 6 weeks later, he was the one standing in front of the newest cadets, teaching them how to stay aware of their surroundings when facing more than one opponent, using our match as the exact example of what happens when you forget your own team is standing behind you. I still do not enjoy the food served at Haven Station, but nobody has spilled my lunch since that night, and nobody has called me the soft one either. Looking back now, I think the real lesson was never about size or strength or even about wrestling itself. It was about understanding a space better than the people trying to control it. 5 opponents in an open field is one kind of problem. 5 opponents crowded into a narrow yard, each one unaware of where the others are standing, is an entirely different problem, and a much smaller one than it first appears. Varric and I are not exactly friends now, but we are something close to it. He still teases me sometimes about human food, and I still tease him about a species built like walking stone losing to someone half his size. We train together most weeks, and cadets from other years have started asking us both to teach the same lesson, the one about numbers and space, and never assuming that more hands automatically means more strength. Sometimes the biggest advantage in a crowded room is simply being the only one who has bothered to notice how crowded it really is.